Good profit is the result of doing many things right. So that is actually the focus.
Purpose for me as a person, for our company, if it's not driven off something that is different than the status quo, I promise you South Africa has got trouble. Doesn't matter who the president is.
Thanks, thanks, Krista. Okay, good morning all. It's really such a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak to you this morning. While Krista is putting the presentation up, I'm going to talk a little bit about leading in tough and difficult times. And what I really want to do is use a little bit of the story in terms of my own personal journey around giving you hopefully some few tools, a few thoughts in terms of perhaps where you are as an individual, where you are within your team here in AFGRI, where you are in whichever team you belong to, and where you are as an organization. A little bit of the story that you've heard there, just to give you a little bit more of that background. I'm a computer engineer by training, Zimbabwean. I came to South Africa in 1994. Worked for Denel, just up the road here, and from Denel moved on to Hewlett Packard, Oracle, Computer Sciences Corporation, various positions, executive positions in the IT world. All of that seemed all very good, all very glamorous, many mistakes made. A lot of those mistakes, big time personal, moral mistakes, failures, high flying, you think you're doing so well, you think it's all about the money, you completely lose perspective on what the important things are in life, and it leads you down a path that you don't necessarily want to go down. So for me, part of the story starts off, I think, we always, at times we have these moments where you suddenly start thinking about life in a different way. And for those who were here last month with Boshoff Krobler, he talked about how he had a serious accident and how that accident led him on a journey of really starting to think about purpose and what purpose was all about. For me, my journey, my key moment was sitting in Sandton Clinic waiting for the result of an AIDS test because my life had become so promiscuous, I just wasn't sure anymore where I stood. And it was at that moment that it hit me that I needed to relook my entire life and what life was really all about and how I needed to proceed going forward. So what you've just heard in that story is a little bit of how that sort of progressed. So part of what I want to do today is in the next 45 minutes or so is maybe just take you through a couple of slides, give you some thoughts, give you some of the lessons that maybe can be applicable to you, maybe not. And then probably around about 10 o'clock or so, really just open up the floor because I don't want to talk about what I think is important. I really want to hear what you want to know. And therefore, I really want to open up some time of questions and just whatever you want to discuss that I can possibly help you with. That's really what I want to talk about. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about leading through tough and uncertain times. I think one of the major things we need to be very aware of is that we are living in a period in time where nothing is constant anymore. Everything changes so rapidly, whether it's in our personal lives, whether it's in business, whether it's the state of South Africa, whether it's what's the next speech that's going to be made in Parliament, whether it's what we pick up in the newspaper and read, things are changing extremely fast every single moment. And therefore, we have to be able to adapt personally, but even critically, organizationally. How do we deal with that? Because often what happens, especially at an organizational level, most organizations that I come across have been built using a mindset and a culture where they can do very well in certain times. And you have a big mismatch when your culture is built upon doing well in times of certainty. You feel extremely lost when you try to move forward and be successful in times where there's a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of organizations actually have to shift their culture to be able to operate in times of uncertainty. And that's a little bit of what we want to try and unpack. So uncertainty, confusion, lost, bewildered, all of these things come into play. The sharks are circling, we need to make the move, but we just don't know how to make the move. So part of what we want to try and talk about in the next 40 or so minutes is a little bit of the what. What are we really talking about when we are talking about leadership? What is leadership? Let's come to a common understanding of what leadership is really all about. But let's also talk about the why. Why is this so critical for us? And at the same time, let's also talk a little bit about the how. Because it doesn't help talking about the what if we don't know the how. And a lot of people, including myself, we get stuck in, okay, this is all good, but how do we do this? And therefore, we want to try and get into the how so that we can just do it. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what leadership actually is really all about. The one thing I just want to give before I talk about this is just a couple of definitions around leadership so we're all on the same page. So, who is a leader? At the end of the day, any person who has influence over another person is automatically a leader. Because leadership is about influence. If you have influence over at least one other person, you are a leader. Leadership is not about title or positions. Leadership is about a lifestyle. If you can influence people, you are automatically a leader. It's not about the title, it's not about the position. In fact, some of the most influential leaders are the ones who don't even have the title. Okay, so that is the definition of leadership that we're using. The other definition that might be worthwhile talking about is the definition of an organization. When I talk about organization, I'm talking about any time two or more people are together, that's an organization. So if you are married, you and your spouse, that's an organization. Your family is an organization. Your team at work is an organization. The bigger AFGRI is an organization. Okay, so let's talk about a quick understanding of what leadership is really all about. Leadership, first of all, is about the personal. You are the leader. And as we will see as we unpack this a little bit more, the most critical thing of leadership, first of all, is self-leadership. You can't be a leader and influence other people positively if you do not commit and invest in your own personal leadership. What is leadership? Leadership is really about the definition that we give to leadership. A leader is somebody who's willing to lay down their own personal agenda for the collective agenda of the people who they lead or the people who they influence. So a leader lays down their own selfish agenda so that the common agenda can be achieved. It's not about me as the leader, it's about the group. Are we able to get to the destination that we need to get to? And what's the purpose of leadership? The purpose of leadership, first of all, is about vision. Because if you don't have vision, clarity of vision, why should anyone follow you? The only reason why people will follow you, the only reason why people will be influenced by you is if you have a vision that they also feel is a vision that resonates with them. So vision is absolutely critical. Again, as Krista said, the first session that Chris did was about vision. What is the AFGRI vision? What is the vision of your different departments, Unigrow, etc.? All the different entities, what is the vision? Because the vision is what draws people in to say, you know what, I want to be part of this. So it's about vision. As a leader, it's critical for us to serve the people that we lead. Serving is basically saying, here's the vision, but as the leader, I'm in a position where it's now my responsibility to help you to be successful at what you are doing in your role in this team. The role of a leader is to make sure that his or her people are successful at what they need to do. That's a good leader. How does he or she do that? By making sure that people are taught, trained, and equipped and empowered. If there's a failure in a team, the first point of call is the leader. Because has the leader cast the vision? Has the leader served the people by ensuring that the people are taught, trained, and equipped and empowered to be able to do what they need to do to get to the destination? And the leader then lets them go, gives them the responsibility to go out and do their job, and then evaluates. So that's just a very quick understanding of what leadership is all really about. And what is a leader doing? A leader is moving people or an organization from a current reality to a desired future. So as a leader, you have to be very clear. What is the desired future that you and your team are trying to get to? You and your organization, you and your family, you and your spouse. What is that you're trying to get to? That has to be very clear. But at the same time, it takes courage to identify where you are currently now. Again, my own personal story is exactly shaped around this. I had to make a decision, where do I want to go personally with my family going forward, and where was I at that particular time, and what needed to happen to bridge that gap. And that's really where uncertainty, fear, and all these things come in. How do we bridge that gap between the desired future and the current reality? A critical element of being able to do that sits within relationships. If there is not a strong foundation of relationships in place, you will not be able to move a team, an organization forward from a current reality to a desired future. Because in the relational aspects is where trust and confidence is built. If we are working with a team of people, an organization, even if it's just with your spouse, if there's no trust and if there's no confidence in each other, it will be very difficult to be able to move. It will be even more difficult to be able to move when uncertainty hits and when things get really tough. So building a strong relational foundation is absolutely a prerequisite if we want to be able to move to the desired future that we're trying to get to. Then obviously there has to be a strategy. How are we going to go about doing what we need to do? But again, just to emphasize, if the relational foundation is not strong enough, the strategy will not work. There are many organizations that have brilliant strategies, but the strategies never see light of day because the relational foundation is not strong enough. There's not enough trust and confidence amongst the people to be able to move and shift things to where you want things to get to. And then obviously we want to achieve some results. There's a results element that we need to get to. So again, just a very quick one diagram. What is leadership all about? What are we really talking about when we talk about leadership? Okay, so with that understanding, let's perhaps begin to start talking about, so what do we need to do as leaders, especially to navigate our way around difficult times and uncertainty to get us to the other side? And I believe the role of leadership is best probably illustrated in this picture right here, because the leader is the guy who actually, or the woman who actually lays down their life and says that I will be the bridge builder to take my people or the people that I influence from the current reality into the desired future. There's a laying down of a life that's involved to be able to make this transition. And again, as I go a little bit further, I will give you a little bit more about how this had to be the only way me and my family could recover from where we were. As the husband and as the father to my children, I had to be the one who lays down his life for us to be able to cross over the bridge and cross over this big gap here that I had created because of my unacceptable behavior as a husband and as a father. So, as a leader, remember, as a leader, if you have influence over one or more people, you are a leader. It's not a positional thing. And therefore, how do you lay down your life so that people can get over to the other side? And by the way, as the leader, you will also make it to the other side. It's not about the leader getting there and everybody else falling into the hole. It's actually about making sure that everybody else gets across, and then you as the leader are the last person who gets to the other side. So, leadership is all about influence. What are we really talking about when we talk about leadership? It's about mobilizing people to achieve a particular vision. It's about mobilizing people to achieve a particular vision. We've already talked about the need for the vision. If there's no vision, then where are the people going to? It has to be clear. Vision has to be clear. How do we mobilize people to achieve a vision? 3 critical things that are, again, non-negotiables in leadership. The way you treat people, absolutely critical. Your behavior. Because the way you treat people will determine whether people are going to come on board and follow you or not. If there isn't an absolute culture in place where people are treated with respect and dignity, don't expect people to be following you. The only reason why people might follow you is if you have a position and you demand to be followed. But that's not true leadership. Demanding to be followed is not leadership. And again, in a lot of situations, what we've done is we've completely misunderstood what real leadership is. And there are many people who occupy positional leadership positions who demand to be followed. Leadership is not about demanding to be followed. It's about creating an environment where people desire to follow. So it's about the way you treat people. Secondly, it's about how you respond to any given situation, especially when things are changing. The critical element of leadership is how do you respond to any given situation? How do I respond when things are going well? But even more importantly, how do I respond when things are not going well? And that response will also touch on how do I treat people? Because what people are looking for in a leader is how do you treat me and how will you respond when the going gets tough? And then thirdly, the quality of the decisions that you make. And the quality of the decisions that you make, especially again, when things are going tough. How do you treat people? How do you respond? And how do you make decisions? The biggest downfall of a lot of teams and organizations is when the going gets tough, we treat people badly. When the going gets tough, we respond in inappropriate ways. When the going gets tough, we make wrong decisions because we're thinking selfishly, not about getting the team to a particular destination. Okay, so the critical thing, we can either positively or negatively influence. A good leader will always positively influence. When everything seems to be collapsing around us, There are those who will positively influence us to come out of the collapse, and there are those who will take us deeper down into the collapse and will typically use control and manipulation to do it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so let's talk about this. If you will notice the three major things I talked about there: how do we treat other people? How do we respond? And how do we make decisions? All three are related to what's inside this brain, what's inside this head here, your brain, and the way we think. And therefore, thinking is absolutely critical when it comes to leadership. So, events are taking place around us all the time. Literally, as we sit in this room, there are billions of events that are taking place. Anything that's going through your five senses, when you hear, when you see, when you taste, all of that, these are all billions of events that your brain is processing even right now. And your brain does something with it. So, vision. Vision is absolutely critical, because if there's no vision, when things are happening around you, vision is a critical element through which you process what's happening around you through. Vision is typically linked very strongly to what your core beliefs are. Out of your core beliefs, you will also have the linkage to purpose. And purpose and vision are also very much connected. Your identity is also connected into this. And then your core values. So anytime anything is happening around you, you are processing what's happening around you through those different aspects. The stronger your core beliefs are, the stronger your vision, the stronger your purpose, the stronger your identity, the stronger your core values, then most of the time you will respond to things happening around you through that. The weaker that is, then the lesser you are able to respond through even what you might claim to be your core belief or your vision or your identity or your core values. And I'll give you a couple of examples practically so we can see how this works. Because you see, that forms our thoughts. If this is not strong enough, most of your thought patterns will be driven through your memory bank. What does that mean? All it means is that you will start to think through based on a lot of things that have happened in the past. You will look at things through the lens of the history of the database that's in your mind. So if I see something, the first response might very well be, okay, I've seen that before, this person is like this, and I might very well make a decision without even hearing what this person is saying, because my initial response is based on a memory data bank. It might be based on perceptions. I think I know what's going on, I already have the answer to what's taking place here, or it might be based on assumptions. And therefore, again, as bad as this seems, some of the stuff that I find as I work with organizations is that there actually is very little thinking taking place. Because people are literally making decisions and going about their days in the corporate environment, in team environments, not by thinking afresh, but by literally using the data bank to make decisions. And especially when things are going tough, you can't make decisions based on the memory bank perceptions or assumptions. Because from our thoughts will drive our feelings. This is where our emotions are raised. Things are happening around us, it triggers a thought processes take place, a feeling happens, and that feeling could be anger, could be fear, could be peace, could be freedom, depending on what it is. Again, all I want to encourage you as a leader, make it a point to constantly be aware of how you are feeling. And ask yourself the question, why, if you're feeling angry, Don't just allow anger to build up and just take it as being, that's just the way it is. Ask yourself the question, why am I feeling angry? Because the more you do that, the more you're becoming self-aware of what's taking place in this brain, which is the most valuable thing that you carry. That's your greatest asset right here. And a lot of people have let this asset go to waste. So, what am I feeling? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling fearful? Why is that? I need to be able to know. Because my feelings, at that point, a good leader who's feeling uncomfortable will then typically go the route of saying, but hang on, I don't want to make decisions based on the memory bank perceptions or assumptions. I need to seek the truth. I want to ask questions. I need to listen to what people are saying. Critical leadership skill, especially in tough times and in uncertain times, is listening and asking questions. You don't know it all. None of us knows it all. But we have to be humble enough to realize and be open enough with our people to say, I don't know it all. I want to listen and I want to ask questions so that I can find out what's really going on here. Once I'm able to do that and process all of that through, again, the vision, the core beliefs, and everything else, then that drives my behavior. Because thoughts will drive feelings, feelings will drive behavior. You can't change somebody's behavior if you don't go backwards. Where's the thought coming from? That's driving the feeling, that's driving the behavior. Change the thought, change the feeling, change the behavior. It's all here in the brain. Okay, so as a leader, if I'm purposely going through this and processing, what's my vision? What's my core belief? What's my identity? What's my core value? What's my purpose? If I have a core value that says, I will respect, if that's a core value, then that means any event that's taking place around me, I will make sure I will always respond in a way that is respectful. So if Krista decides not to respect me, I will still respect her back. If you decide to call me names, to call me anything that's derogatory, I will still respect you. I won't change my core value of respect based on what you are doing. Because no person should be able to control your mind and your brain. Nobody can make you do something. Because as soon as we say, this guy made me do this, what I'm saying is, I'm giving you control over my brain. I'm giving you control over my thoughts. No one can take control over your thoughts. Don't give people that power. Okay. If you have made respect to be a core value, it doesn't matter. If somebody calls you the worst name you've ever heard in your life, will you choose to continue to respect them? Because you see, if you move your position because you respect people who respect you, and then you move your position to not respect because Krista has not respected me, who's influencing who here? Who's the leader here? I've lost my leadership position of positive influence. So irrespective of whether Krista respects me or not, I will still respect. It's a core value, coming from a core belief. Okay, so from that point, we can now respond. We can now respond to the event. The event is Krista has not respected me. Krista has called me names. Initially, my first feeling might be, how dare Krista call me this? But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be viewing what she has said through my core belief, my vision, my purpose, my identity, my core values, and then from there, I will then respond to Krista. Not to say that I agree with what she's saying, but I will still voice my disagreement in respect. I will never attack her in any way. Okay. So these are some of the things that, again, all this is pointing to is when things are tough, if we are not conscious of these things, we will typically behave and respond through the memory bank, perceptions, assumptions, fear, anger, and we respond and we lose influence. We typically control and manipulate the situation rather than actually empowering and serving people. What is the number one thing that stops us from seeking the truth, asking questions, and listening and going through this process? It's pride. It's selfishness. It's low self-esteem. It's insecurity. Whenever you have those things in play, you will find that people will have difficulty re-looking, because all they want to do is they want to get their way and their anger out. And it's typically pride, selfishness, low self-esteem, insecurity, and therefore we try to control the situation. Because again, when things are changing very constantly, if we have not grasped this amazing machine we have in our heads called the brain, we will revert back to the old way of doing things, because as human beings, change is one of the things that we resist so often, because we love to revert back to the memory bank, perceptions, and assumptions. And because of our pride and selfishness, we never question that. And therefore we end up controlling and manipulating things. So things that we can't control, we try to impose ourselves on them so that we can control them. But there's certain things that we can't control. We just need to respond appropriately. Krista, can we quickly do that Giants video? Just want to play a little video clip here, just to see a little bit of what influence is about. Oops. Okay. The point of this is, what are the things that you can do where you are limiting yourself, but you can go so much further? And I think as individuals, that's a question we need to be always asking ourselves, and we need to be asking, where can the people that we influence and lead, how much further can they go if we are true leaders? How much further can we go if we choose to really begin to use this amazing machine, this amazing gift that we have in our heads? We can influence with love. And again, in the business corporate setting, a lot of people ask, but how is this possible? When I watched that video, I was fortunate enough in the story that I shared with you, where I had a coach, very similar to this guy, who helped me get to the point of understanding why my behavior had been so unacceptable, and the journey that I needed to take, firstly with my wife, to be able to get us to a point of recovery, and also with my children, who had lost trust and confidence in me. Because I was that dad in the highlight of my corporate high-flying life. I'm the dad that my young son would say to me, Dad, I've got a soccer match on Wednesday. Will you come to the match? I've made the team. And I would say to him, son, I'll be there. On Wednesday, I'll be too busy to rock up. he would come back home and he would say, Dad, that's okay. I know you're busy. I've got another match next week. Will you come back? And I would say to him, I'll be there. And I'll still be busy. Then he would come back again the following week and he would say to me, Dad, I scored the goal. Will you come tomorrow? And I would say to him, I'll be there. And I wouldn't pitch up. And then one day he eventually came and he said, Dad, you know what? I know you're very busy. You don't have to come anymore. That broke my heart. And I decided there are a lot more important things in life. But at the same time, through that experience, I've also come to realize that when you can come from as far down the hole that I was in, there is no team that cannot recover. There is no relationship that cannot recover. There is no business that cannot recover if you do the right things. It's a guarantee. And part of those things is this word called love, that often in business people think, how can you be talking about love in business? But you see, we need to actually understand what love is for us to really be able to understand what we are talking about. Because love is patient. We have to be patient. Love is kind. I have to be kind. Love does not envy. It's not about building hierarchies of envy. It doesn't boast. It's about us, not me. It's about not being proud, because we're all created the same. It's about we don't dishonor other people. We don't seek ourselves. We lay down our own agendas so that the whole team can make it. We're not easily angered because we're constantly seeking for the truth. We're asking questions. We're understanding that perhaps other people are broken and therefore their behavior is coming from a point of pain. And therefore, how do I understand their pain rather than judging their behavior? It's about keeping no record of wrongs. Maybe Krista has said something bad to me on the spur of the moment because she's having a bad time at home. But if I keep that as a record in my database, and every time I meet with Krista, that's the first thing that I hold against her, I'm never going to be able to work with her ever again. So how do I erase the wrongs? Does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Always protects. How do I protect my team members? How do I protect those who I work with? Am I watching over them? Do I look after their backs? Always trusts. Krista, even as she talks to me, if something went wrong yesterday, I trust enough that what she's saying to me now, I need to evaluate what she's saying to me now based on the merits of what she's saying now, not on what my thoughts and emotions are sitting with from yesterday. It hopes and it perseveres. See, if we can build this type of relationship between leaders, employees, customers, where we can have these attributes in play, we build some of the most amazing teams. And as I finish off now, I just want to give you a couple of tools, just a couple of thoughts for you from an organizational perspective. Again, Krista has been investing so much time, etc., in building a healthy organization within AFGRI. Why is that critical? Remember what I said again about the relational foundation. If there's not a strong relational foundation, the work will not get done. So it's about building organizational health. Once you have organizational health, it's about clarity in terms of the vision. What is it that we want to achieve? And what are the key elements of what we are trying to do? How do we know if we've achieved it? How do we know where we're going? Very simple matrix that in almost every engagement, if you can implement this in your team, you will change the performance of your team exponentially. Everything you do should be measured and there should be consequences to it. There has to be clarity in roles. If there's no role clarity, we don't know what we're doing. There has to be clarity with responsibilities. Who's responsible for what? We have to set the right expectations. See, we might have the role, we might have the responsibility, but if I don't know what you are expecting from me in my role, I could be doing exactly what I think is right, but you as my leader or my boss, that's not what you're looking for. My title, my job description might absolutely be clear, but individually, as a leader, I want to find out from everyone in my team, what are you expecting from me and what am I expecting from you? If you get that level of clarity in roles, responsibilities, and expectations between each person you work with in this environment of organizational health, you are able now, I'm able to make a commitment to now say, you know what, I know what my role is, I know what my responsibility, what the expectations are, I can now make a commitment that this is what I'm going to be doing. I can also be held accountable. Because I've made the commitment, I know what the expectation is, I know what the responsibility, I know the role, I can now make a commitment and be held accountable, and let's also affirm and reward. When things are going well, let's celebrate. Let's be the people who are affirming, well done, you've done this well. Well done for what you're doing. See, when we do that, what we are doing is we are affirming the identity of people. Build a culture of affirming. Again, if you're married, children at home, go and affirm your husbands, your wives, your children. It's amazing what happens. It's a quick story that I'll just tell you now. We did some work with the taxi associations in the Western Cape, helping deal with the conflict that was taking place. The guys are killing each other on the streets. And one of the guys who came into the sessions, we started talking about affirmations, the power of affirmations, why affirmations is such a critical thing for us to be able to actually perform and get where we want to get to. A few weeks back, he comes back. In fact, a month or two, he comes back into the next session and he says, guys, please can I share a story? And he says, here's my story. I took my 6-year-old son to school a couple of weeks ago, and the teacher called me in and said to me, Mr. XYZ, what has happened to your child? Your child was the most troublesome kid in class, creating havoc, but in the last 4 weeks, something has happened. He's completely changed. And this dad then said, I realized that after I understood about affirmations, for 6 years, the whole life of my son, I had never affirmed him. And I went home and I started affirming my child, and his performance completely turned around. Why? A young boy desperate to get the affirmation of his father. As a leader, don't just see the negative in people. Isn't it amazing how often we so often only speak to each other when it's negative? Or we only even speak to our kids when something has gone wrong, but we never acknowledge when something has gone right. It's just doesn't make sense. Let's affirm, because what you're doing is you're building up their identity, you're building up their confidence so that they can deliver and do what they need to do. And at the same time, if there are people who can't do this, there's a point where discipline comes in. And discipline is helping people change to come into conformance with what we are trying to achieve. And if somebody can't, there's a time where people have to go. You see, if you are a leader and you have a team of people, if you continue to allow behavior that is unacceptable in the team, and there are no consequences for that unacceptable behavior, and you allow it to continue, everyone else in the team will be adversely affected, that they will actually end up not performing. Because they will see you as the leader accepting behavior that's unacceptable, and therefore the whole team will eventually collapse into unacceptable behavior. So therefore, when behavior is not acceptable and discipline is not working, you know what? There's a time where even in love, you can tell somebody, this is not the right environment for you. I think you need to move on. Okay, we want to achieve vision. We have to have unity. We have to be able to work together. For us to be able to work together, we need to have trust and confidence. Trust and confidence comes from dignity and respect. It's behavior. That's why, again, right at the beginning, I said, as a leader, the way you behave, the way you treat other people, the way you respond to situations is critical, because it will determine whether you will treat people with dignity and respect, and therefore whether people will trust you, and therefore whether people will deliver what they need to deliver. It comes from feelings. Is it possible for us to not have any anger, to not be emotionally offended, and to have no stress? I believe the more we are able to process through our core beliefs, our core values, our vision, our self-identity, and our purpose, seeking the truth, listening, asking questions, the more anger will disappear, the more we will not feel offended, because what we're now beginning to do is we're beginning to say, hang on, there's always one more thing about a person's life I know nothing about. I don't know why Krista is shouting and screaming today. Could it be that Krista's relative is sick and that she's coming in with that baggage as she comes into the... If I respond in a disrespectful way, is it going to help her in any way? It's not going to help her in any way. Why am I typically responding in a disrespectful way? It's typically because I'm insecure myself. And therefore, I'm trying to get rid of my insecurity by behaving in a certain way to belittle her or to bring her down, because what the real problem is the real problem is actually me, not her. There's always one more thing about my own life I know nothing about. I have blind spots. Nobody's perfect. As a leader, don't think your position or your job is to be perfect. Your job is to actually find out the truth and help make the right decisions. There's always one more piece of information about this situation that I might not have. And therefore, when something happens suddenly, I don't want to respond too quickly. I want to find out, why has this happened? Often we respond too quickly before we've thought through, and we make bad decisions. Some final thoughts. Are you leading through the lens of brokenness of the past, or are you leading through the lens of the hope of a healed future? Are you leading through the lens of captivity to the past, or are you leading through the lens of freedom from the past? You will make mistakes, and others will do too. Ask for forgiveness and forgive others. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. You don't know everything, and others don't either. Ask for help and give others help. Hold others accountable and be willing to be held accountable. We now have a structure in my family. I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. And as a family, we put something together that we call a relational covenant or relational agreement, which basically says, this is how we're going to treat each other as a family. Then it also then says, if anyone deviates from this, here are the consequences. Here's how we deal with it. We will deal with it in this manner, in this manner, in this manner. My two boys have signed that agreement. Maud, my wife, has signed, and I have signed. If I behave in a way that is not consistent with the way that we've agreed to, my 14-year-old son can come to me and say, Daddy, that's what we agreed we will. That's how we're going to behave. You've stepped out of line. My 14-year-old holds me accountable to my behavior. Let's hold each other accountable. You're not superior, you're not inferior. Likewise, others are not superior and others are not inferior. I found a quote from a mentor of mine. I found that when I intentionally control my thoughts, walk humbly, give thanks, love and forgive others unconditionally, that I generally have a pretty good day. You can have a good day every day. It's a leader's job to cast vision and create culture. It's a leader's job to equip people with strategies and skills to compete and win as they contribute towards the achievement of the vision. It's a leader's job to earn trust worth following. It's a leader's job to take responsibility for failures and work to correct them. It's a leader's job to attribute success to his or her team and to celebrate achievement with them. Leaders need to stop demanding buy-in from their people and start leading with a vision and culture that's worth buying into. If we're still having problems trying to insist that people buy in, then we've got a big problem. Because what we're trying to then do is we're trying to force people to follow us. But if we're setting vision and the culture that's conducive, that honors people, that respects people, then people will automatically want to follow us. That's when an organization becomes completely unbeatable. You can't beat that team. That team will achieve things that are beyond anything that you can think of because they have made that commitment. See, one of the things I also realized is often we sit in this boat and we sort of think the problem is over there. And we have a few guys trying to get the water out of the boat, and we sit happily on the other side thinking, you know what, I'm sure glad this problem is not on our side. But the reality of the matter is we are all in the boat together. And this boat is going to sink if we don't do something about it. Part of my personal journey is I realized that my role as the father and the leader of my family was at the point where I was heading for divorce. My children were at a point where they were going to completely disown me. And I had to make a choice that would I lay down my life, my pride, and everything else, and will I start a journey to come out of the hole that I was in, irrespective of what circumstance would come, irrespective of whether Maud, my wife, would completely reject everything that I had to say because she didn't have enough trust and confidence. But you see, what happens is at times you make a move and you don't get the response that you are expecting. Often what happens is we go back into our box and we give up. You see, you make the move, you don't get the response. It's okay. You keep making the move. Because the more you make the move and the more trust and confidence builds up that we are genuine about what we are wanting to do here, what you start finding is that the embrace starts to come back. Because it just doesn't happen automatically. When there's hurt and pain, it takes time to bring it back. But the question is, was I willing to lay down my life for that and make it a life pursuit until I got to it, because that was the most important thing for me, and that even money and my work was of no importance until I achieved that? And would I go through a complete financial collapse because that was the most important thing that I needed to get back to before I could move ahead? And those are some of the decisions we need to make. So again, I share that with you. You know where you are, whether it's personally, in your family, in your team here at AFGRI, in your team elsewhere, in the organization. What does leadership mean for you? And will you think about how you lead in uncertainty when you don't know what response you're going to get? How will you lead? How will you respond to events that you don't have control over? Will you continue to treat people with respect? Will you continue to respond appropriately? Will you continue to think through and make decisions that can move and influence things positively rather than take things backwards? So I think those are the real key things that I wanted to just share with you. And I think it's about 10:15 now. And I think what I'd like to do is use a few moments now, specific questions. Maybe there are scenarios that you want to talk about that I can help you maybe unpack. Maybe there's even some stuff that I've talked about that you want me to go through again and maybe re-explain because I've explained it too fast, whatever the case is, but this is your time. Please shoot away and let me do my best to answer. Right. I mean, a lot of what I've gone through here, some of the processes that Krista is doing, the personal development plans and all of that, a lot of that stuff is covered in what Krista is doing, because a big component of this is that first bit where as an individual, the hardest bit of leadership is when you actually don't look at the people, but you actually turn around and you look at yourself. That's the hardest bit of leadership. This is, when you're looking at people, it's easy. But when you have to look back at yourself and really begin to assess and evaluate what's going on here, because the quality of leadership that you take out over there is based on your ability to be able to assess what's going on here. If you're able to do that, and that's part of what PDP is doing, it's a powerful foundation to be able to release the types of leaders that we are talking about here, where people will follow you because they are hungry to follow you. So what does one need to do? It already starts with what I was just talking about right now. You get to a point where you say, but you know what? This is not working here. Why is it not working? Often what we do is we think it's not working because it's everybody else's fault. Because the hardest is to look at ourselves. So the biggest thing is breaking the barrier of thinking that it's not working because it's everybody else's problem. It's my wife's problem. Why doesn't she do this for me? Why doesn't she do that? Why doesn't she do that? You know what? You justify. As human beings, we're very quick to justify our behavior because it's a difficult thing for us to say, hang on, what I've been doing all along is not right. And by the way, it's nobody else's fault, but it's mine. That's where it starts. When you're able to look inward and say, okay, that's not acceptable, and it's because of me. That's the first point. And then once you do that, what you start to do is you start to understand feelings. What's driving? What am I feeling? That's why I said one of the things I recommend to people is have a little booklet. Here's a practical thing for you. Have a little booklet that you keep. And in your little booklet, just make it a little booklet where you write down your feelings at every given. You go to a meeting and she makes you so angry in the meeting. Make a little note of that. And then sit back at the end of the day and think, you know what? Why was I so angry in the meeting? Where was that coming from? Was I feeling threatened? Was I feeling whatever? Where is that coming? So when you come into touch with your feelings, it helps you to start to decide, okay, hang on. I was feeling that because of this, because of my own insecurity. I was feeling this because of my own identity issue. I was feeling this because of... You start to make those connections. And as you make those connections, what you're doing is you're digging to the root of the thought patterns because your thought patterns are driving your feelings, your behavior. So it's going back to your thought patterns. Where are my thought patterns coming from? And as I said earlier on, the stronger you have a vision, purpose, which I'm going to talk about now, core beliefs, core values, etc., the more you will start to then realize, okay, that's not consistent with what my core belief, what my core value. I'm just going to share one thing if you don't mind. So if, for example, if I have a core belief that says to me, every single person, and I hope you don't mind, I'm just going to go a little bit into the spiritual, religious side of things a little bit. If I have a core belief that says every single human being is created in the image of God. If that's my core belief. And therefore, I have a core value that says if everyone is created in the image of God, it means I must respect every person in exactly the same way, irrespective of what color, what religion, whatever they come from. I must respect them because they're all created in the image of God. But my behavior is not consistent with that. there's a problem. And therefore, even when we look at some of the challenges that we face in South Africa around the racial issues, etc., it's a disconnect. Because if that's what my core belief is, and my core value is that, why am I behaving differently then? I need to be able to assess why that is happening. And it means there's probably some pain, there's probably some brokenness, there's probably something that is still driving my thought patterns, because I'm driving my thoughts from the memory bank, I'm driving my thoughts from the perceptions and the assumptions, and not from the reality of what things are, because I'm not processing what's happening here through the set of what I claim to be my core belief or my core values. Vision is about saying, where is it that we want to go? What does it look like? If we are to get to our desired future, what does that look like? So for me and as a family, our vision is to see an Africa that is transformed, that is actually fulfilling its purpose, and an Africa that is completely restored to where we believe an Africa should be. That's our vision. Our purpose is to use all the gifts and the talents and whatever we have to help people to contribute towards getting there. So the vision is, that's what it looks like when it's done. The purpose is, what do I bring to the table to be able to help that to happen? That's basically what we say. So AFGRI's vision is to bring food security. Purpose is, okay, so there might be different purposes involved in terms of what your purpose is in terms of doing that. So if your vision is one around where your personal vision links into what AFGRI is doing, then it's easier for you to be working in an AFGRI, because your vision is now linked to that vision, and your purpose is part of the roadmap that gets there. You're contributing towards that roadmap. Yeah, I mean, I at times I wish it didn't have to be that, where often it's a major life situation that happens that gets our brains to suddenly reset, and we start thinking, oh my goodness, what do I need to do here? I wish we could do it a lot more voluntarily. But anyway, yeah. So I think for me, it was just getting to that point where, as I said, for me, sitting in Sandton Clinic was a big thing. You know, you sit there and you're thinking, okay, this has gone too far. I've got a test that's coming. And I'm literally saying there, you know, God, I'll do anything for this test to come back. I'll do anything. Please, anything. And as you sit there, and as it comes back negative, you sort of leave and you say to yourself, okay, never again will I be in this situation. But for me, it was a flood of realizing how many people close to me I had hurt because of my selfishness. Because as I sat there, the one thing that poured over me immediately was, you are so selfish. You are so proud. You are so selfish. And I realized I had a trail of destruction because of that. Even in some of my business relationships. I mean, part of the reason why, you know, the financial collapse that we went through is I was running an investment business, and I realized pretty much round about the same time that I had hurt so many people because of unacceptable and unethical behavior. And I just got to the point of saying, I need to clean this up. I want to be able to get to a point where my relationship, because my faith is a big part of my journey, where my relationship is good with God, but my relationship is also good with any other person who's walking on the face of this earth. That I want to be in any position, anywhere in the face of this earth, and I want to be able to be comfortable and know that there's not one single person in this world who's thinking, yeah, that Patrick guy messed me up. And that's what I started to strive for, to get to that point. So one of the things, I try as much as I can, even on a daily basis, not to go to bed angry. I will work through it. If I need to give somebody a call and work something out, I would rather do that. Because I would rather go to bed every day, sleep well, wake up and know that there's not any person out there who's thinking this Patrick guy has done me bad. Okay. Without bringing the spiritual element into it, completely out of it, one of the ways that one can approach that is youngsters are very much into understanding the issue of influence. They want to influence. So Facebook and whatever else, those are all expressions of youngsters wanting to influence, but also secondly, with a deep addiction to want to be affirmed. Because sadly enough, as parents, we're not affirming our children, so they seek affirmation elsewhere, even if it's 20 likes on Facebook. It's a symptom of a society that no longer values the things that are important. We are no longer affirming our children, so they go to Facebook. But they also deeply understand the importance of influence because they want to influence their friends and their circles they're in. So one of the ways of doing it is the example I gave. Will you allow another person to control you and how you think and how you behave, or will you be the person who does the influencing? Because every time somebody disrespects you and you choose to disrespect them back, it basically means that they are taking the position of influence over your life. And youngsters, when they see that, they will typically think, but hang on, yeah, okay, maybe I need to look at it differently. So that's the one of the ways that you could look at it. It's this dynamic of influence. Who's influencing who here? And I think once they understand that, they tend to start thinking through that element of how they want to influence. Okay, yeah. I think what I'm hearing here is often what we so often do is we behave in certain ways when we're in certain situations. And what's really happening there is we have what I call our ideal self. Here's my ideal self in the office. Here's my ideal self when I'm at home. And here's my real self. This is my natural position, but I now play towards my ideal self in this environment versus that environment. That can be extremely stressful. It's actually one of the reasons why people get burnt out stress, because you're trying to role play here, but your ideal, your real self is here, but you're trying to role play your ideal self in this environment, and then you have to go to the different environment and you do it differently. Again, it's a symptom of us either in this environment, I figure out how best do I protect myself in this environment and what do I need to do to protect myself in this environment. So I behave in a certain way. I go to this environment, how best do I protect myself in this environment and how do I behave in a way that protects me? That's typically what we are doing. And it's a symptom of systems and organizations that are typically broken, because what you're also doing in your mind, you're going through the mind process of saying, if I behave in this way over here, I might get hurt. I might be condemned. I might be this, I might be this, I might be his. And therefore you shift from where you really, what your ideal self is. And I think what we really need to be trying to do is to really be real with ourselves. And if you have certain core values of how you of who you are, how do you best take that to whatever environment that you're in? The reason why we might not take that is if this environment is completely toxic, then we will put protection around us because of the toxic environment. But if environments were not toxic, then I believe we would be in a stronger position to be truly who we are in any given environment. The next bit that I'm going to say, please do not take it as being I'm in any way saying that I'm there or this is me, this is not a self thing for me. But also what tends to also happen is the more you begin to trust in your self-identity, the more you will begin to take yourself out into different situations the same, because you are confident enough that I am enough with what I am, and therefore I will influence this situation or that situation because I know who I am and I'm okay with that. Again, it might be, yeah. It's none of this that I'm saying. Again, everything I've said this morning, let me make a disclaimer here. None of this, I might be talking about this in a very easy way. None of this is easy. So please don't think that I'm trying to give you some stuff that you can quickly. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's difficult stuff because you're dealing at the core of it with a database of broken hearts, a database of people who have been, abused, people who've been belittled, people who've been whatever. It's all the pain and the brokenness, because all that's happening is the more you deal with what's inside here, the more that you are now able to view the outside world in a different way. If I have grown up in an environment where I've been abused, maybe not, in a stable home and whatever, all those things are literally sitting in a database. And if those haven't been dealt with yet, you will view life through those things, and you will protect yourself through those things, and you will behave through those things. So for me, again, part of the answer to your question was actually helping. As I said, I had a mentor who walked this journey because I would never have walked it myself. I had a mentor who was able to help me understand even historical things of brokenness and hurts that were actually influencing the way that I was behaving. Even when it actually even came to my mindset about women. That's why I was doing what I was doing, because I had a very different mindset about women. And without me understanding what my mindset towards women was and why I thought I had the right to abuse and not respect women, because that's exactly what I was doing. It comes from, there's a hurt that's coming in. Brilliant question. That what you've just asked there is probably the number one thing that will build support for you in a team. So I always say to leaders, you know what? When you have made a mistake, it's your greatest opportunity to build confidence and trust in your team out of your mistake. Why? Because when you've made a mistake, when you don't have the pride and the selfish ego, etc., that's the time where you go back to your team, because you know you don't know everything. We all make mistakes. This is the time where you go back to your team and you say to your team, I did this. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Will you please forgive me? Will you hold me accountable not to do this again? And is there anything else that I've done that has been wrong that you need to make me aware of? You do those 6 steps, which we call a 6-step apology. You do those 6 things, and your team will bond to you like never before, because people will think that's the leader we want, who is willing to acknowledge when he's made a mistake, who's willing to be humble enough to ask us for forgiveness, and who's willing for us to hold him accountable to what he's doing, and who's also willing to ask us, guys, is there anything else that I've done wrong here? When you are able to do that, I can guarantee you, you will build a team that is stronger than like you've never seen before. Use that mistake as being the perfect opportunity to build a team. But it takes humility. If there's no humility, that doesn't happen. And therefore, we try to control and manipulate the situation, and people will never respect us. They will never have confidence and trust if we are constantly trying to manipulate and control the situation. But when we come and we're open and we say, even children, if we've done wrong, you go to your 6-year-old son and you tell him, my son, this is not acceptable, son. Daddy was wrong. Because what you're doing is you're teaching even children to realize. Because you see, part of the culture, which is completely incorrect, is we start to build a culture, even in leadership, that we think leaders know it all. No, a leader doesn't know it all. Where we think a leader is perfect. No, a leader is not perfect. We are all human beings, and we will make mistakes, and we will continue making mistakes until the day we die. The question is, what do we do with the mistakes? Do we shove them under the table and continue as if nothing has happened, or are we willing to step up and say, I've made a mistake, I will take responsibility, and I will deal with it? Okay. Affirmations, an affirmation that comes that does not carry genuineness from the heart, I can almost guarantee you 99% of the times you will be able to see straight through it. That does not help anyone in any way. That becomes an affirmation that's been used for manipulative processes. That doesn't work at all, because you will actually, you'll be so disgusted by it that you will see straight through it in terms of, so affirmations are not things that we do to manipulate people. Affirmations are things that are genuinely coming from the heart because it's a genuine thing. I've seen something that you are doing that genuinely I appreciate, and I express it to you. Or I see something in your character that I genuinely appreciate, and I say it to you. Manipulation will come through. So affirmations, not for manipulation purposes, because then it completely backfires. Yeah. So in the work environment, if you're wanting to affirm somebody, at home, it has to be genuine. If it's not genuine, don't. Because people will see straight through it. If you find that somebody is just, you've done a good job and it's a passing thing every single day, the way I would respond is I would say to them, you know what? Can we have a coffee? Because you are commending me for a good job every single day, but I'm really curious to understand, what is it that you're seeing that I'm doing so well? Engage them in a discussion. Because what you're now doing is you're now saying, you know what, I'm not interested. Not that you're not interested, but you're now saying, okay, there's something here at the surface that you're talking about, but I now want to understand this deeply. And if somebody is genuine, they will have that discussion with you because they will have the genuine deepness of what they're expressing in the affirmation. If they can't have that discussion, that already tells you that this is not coming from a deep place. This is a superficial thing that's maybe being used for other purposes. So engage people in the discussion and understand. So tell me a bit more. I really, tell me what's going on so well here that you keep saying to me, and hear what they have to say. Okay, so let me come back to the purpose of leadership that I briefly talked about. Leadership is about, first of all, vision. There's a time where, as a leader, you have to step into the role where you say, guys, this is where we're going. You're casting vision. You're getting the buy-in from people to where we're going. Once I've gotten the buy-in, what I then want to do is I then want to shift roles, and I now become the servant. What am I doing when I'm serving? I'm now saying, this is where we're going, but let's all understand what our roles and responsibilities are to get us there. So if we're going to Everest, you carrying the water, you carrying the food, you carrying this, we're all going to Everest, but we've got different functions as we get to Everest. As a leader, that's my responsibility to make sure we know exactly what we are doing to get us there. So I'm now serving you by helping you understand what it is that we need to do. It could be making sure that you are trained, you are taught, you are equipped, you are empowered to be able to do what you do. So in that role, I'm no longer casting vision, I'm serving you to make sure you're ready to be able to do what you need to do. Because for us to get to Everest, I can't get to Everest myself. It needs every single person here to do what they need to do, otherwise we're going to die. We all need to be able to do that. So, and then after that, I then say, guys, I now give you full authority in your area. If you are the water person, you are the best water person. And I need, when it comes to water, as the leader, even though I'm the leader, I will subordinate to you when it comes to the water decision that you are making because you understand water more than me. But if I'm a prideful leader and I think it's all about me, I will come and I will make water decisions when I don't know anything about water and you are the water person. But again, I then evaluate because I still want to ask you, how is the water supplies going? How are things going there? So that picture of the guy lying down, we have cast vision. We're going over there. Guys, let me now help you by giving you everything that you need so that you can play your role to get us there. So it's no longer about me anymore. It's about how do I help you to be the most successful people that you can be, because out of your success, guess what's in there? My success. Okay. If I can get you all across that bridge, and if I'm strong enough to then raise myself up and join you at the end, I've been a good leader.